Why put them right beside people's houses? It's Canada, there's lots of empty ground, right? How could it not have stray emissions? What is electricity but radiomagnetic waves emanating from those wires? The people who are pro are usually the same ones that they're green energy, green planet, save Mother Earth. I believe the nearest one's going to be about 3/4 of a mile from my house, but I hope to be sold up and out of here by then.
As I stand here and stare at the location of a future energy generator, I can't help but ask myself, am I a bad person? Deep down, I feel like my family's doing the right thing. Like everyone else who signed the contract, we're just innocent people trying to leave our green footprint and get by. I never expected to receive such a strong opposition from our neighborhood. These machines unintentionally severed the bond that held us together. When I first started hearing of the threats and the unkind words directed towards my family, I'll admit, I was mad. However, I soon realized these people were worried sick. Meet Stephen Donaldson, a crafty woodworker, a proud grandpa, and my father. He's your typical retired baby boomer with unrested glimpses of the psychedelic 60s in his eyes. Perhaps his hippie days are responsible for his passion in renewable energy. For as long as I can remember, my dad's been fascinated by wind turbines. The way he saw it was, we have the extra land, why wouldn't we take the opportunity? In 2009, it seemed like we were going to get our wish. Samsung showed up at our doorstep with a contract that we couldn't refuse. But it didn't take us long to find out that we made some enemies. Friends of ours changed their opinions about us pretty fast.
I started to feel some hostility from the neighborhood shortly, not right when I first signed the contract with Samsung, because at that time, it was in its early stages. I think I was one of the first to sign. And then somebody from outside the area, from some other anti-wind group, came into the area and started planting the seeds of worry in a lot of people's minds. And that's when I started getting a lot of friction. So it was probably a year after I initially signed the contract. And then it grew from that point. I think there are three main reasons for it. One of those reasons is that they've been fed a lot of misinformation. Another reason is that a lot of the land around here is government owned, so only very few people own properties big enough to put a wind turbine on and benefit from that financially. So I think there's a certain amount of jealousy in the area because, you know, they have to live close to them and they're not getting anything for it. I think that's part of the problem. And some people are just genuinely scared. Like, I know people that I've known for a long time that are absolutely terrified because of all the rumors and all the information they think they have, that these wind turbines are going to kill them. And you can't convince them otherwise. Nobody, even experts who have tried to talk to some of these people, can't convince them that that's just not the case.
In 2009, the Ontario government issued the Green Energy Act. Its purpose was to encourage energy conservation in home and business, create clean energy jobs, and expand renewable energy generation. Before its recent closure, Nanticoke was Canada's single largest source of greenhouse gases. You would think with such large amounts of air pollution that residents would be more than ready for a revolution in electrical generation methods. We began to feel alienated by other community members. This eventually turned into hostility and even anger. But hey, there's a reason for everything, so I decided it was time to hear their side of the story. Betty Ort invited me into her home to tell us her concerns. She also invited friends who were in the fight against turbines in Haldimand County.
When they talk about the sound of the turbines, and their classic sales pitch is that they do make a sound, but it's no louder than the refrigerator in your kitchen. That's a lie.
I had tinnitus a year ago before the turbines are going up, and I only get it once in a while, but now it's pretty well constant. And when the wind really blows from the north, I seem to really get affected quite bad because it's bouncing off the turbine towers.
We have a particular in Haldimand County that on paper says they were against the wind project, but entered into an agreement, as they said, was the best option. There's nothing we could do, so we might as well get some financial benefit from it. How can you justify taking money? It doesn't mitigate the risk of harm, the harm that's being reported. There comes a time where money shouldn't rule what's really in the best interest. There are lawsuits pending against the people who actually are hosting the infrastructure.
I think the most important to me is that we had no say. This Green Energy Act took away our democratic rights.
My major concern is we've been living here for 40 years, and when they stuck these turbines in, I have documents here that proves property values are going to go down around 11%. So I spent my whole life putting money into this place. So when I retire, and then somebody comes along and my neighbor signs a contract and says, sorry, sir, but you're going to take 11% off the cost of your house now.
When neighbors are suing neighbors, I mean, that's unheard of. I mean, usually there's other resolutions.
It felt good to hear another perspective of the situation, but I'm still not 100% convinced. A lot of these concerns seem a bit far-fetched. First, I noticed their claim about the noise. After some research, I discovered that at 500 meters, levels drop to about 38 dB. That's about the same as your local library. Even off first-hand experience, I barely noticed a sound from about 300 meters. Certainly nothing worthy of a lawsuit. Another concern was the drop in property values. To get some answers, I went to a local expert, Haldimand County's own Darren Papineau.
Well, I think in the long term, everything will blow over. Once the people move out that didn't want wind turbines to begin with, and we get the new buyers that come in, I think once they become more common everywhere, then people will become to accept them, and you know, they're just going to be a fact of life, and eventually it'll just level off. In the short term, there's just a lot more houses for sale than there are buyers, so that generally will affect values because it takes longer for homes to sell. All the positives for wind turbines, I think we've got the Vibrancy Fund, which is a fund that was given to the county to help the vibrancy of the community. I believe it's around $37 million plus. They're looking at putting a large portion of the dollars back into the areas that are hosting them. And then there are, of course, the areas that aren't hosting them that do host hospitals and ambulances and things like that the people out of wind turbine area do have access to, so they'll likely be putting money back.
It seems that the county might be all right in the end with their property values. When it comes to people leaving their homes to avoid the turbines, other people that are okay with them will move in. This wasn't the only concern, though. I also heard rumors of many health and environmental issues. The list is actually quite large, and it varies from the ridiculous to the terrifying. I went to Toronto to talk to an environmental expert by the name of Cadell Last.
People do suffer psychological illnesses, but they're not caused by the wind turbines directly. They're caused by something called the nocebo effect. Nocebo effect is like the bad, evil twin of the placebo effect. The nocebo effect's the exact opposite, where you keep hearing that something's gonna cause something, like wind turbines are gonna cause nausea, so then when the wind turbines go up, you feel nauseous. It's that powerful, right? The nocebo effect, your mind isn't something to play around with, it's real. And so that's why we do have to have sympathy for people who say that they feel sickness or they feel some sort of illness, whatever that illness happens to be, because of wind turbines, when it's not actually being caused by the wind turbine, it's being caused by the nocebo effect. I think solar and wind are our two most promising options over the next 20 to 30 years, because the data shows us that our planet's in trouble and that we're probably not going to have an Arctic by 2030, and that we're already over 400 parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. If we go any higher, we're in serious trouble because we have no idea what's gonna happen as a result of that. We need to design wind turbines that don't infringe on our personal space as much as possible, whether that's audio or visual, you know, and that's a real problem. And I would rather the conversation, from my personal perspective, I would rather the conversation be centered around that, making sure we build wind turbines that are community friendly, rather than debating these other issues that don't seem to have any validity.
Living minimum distances from wind turbines frightens many locals. But what about the construction workers that are constantly in close proximity? I asked Dan Lemon, a former worker, if he suffered from any turbine-related negative effects.
Negative effects? No, I didn't feel any negative effects. It was quite amazing to see them go up just to see them sprout up. Every workday, another one was going up. So when I climbed the tower, you could see this vast array of windmills going on. It was just like something out of a Star Wars movie that all of a sudden you just had 6 windmills over here. And so it was really neat to see it go up. At the top was, they called it the nacelle, and the nacelle had doors that opened up. And then it was like doors to heaven. It was like when those doors opened up and it was summertime and we're right by the lake and the sun's shining and I just had breakfast, I'm like, can it get any better?
Still hungry for more answers, I went to West Lincoln to talk to wind protesters that are trying to prevent a project from moving into their neighborhood. Susan, a proud member of Mothers Against Wind Turbines, sat down with me to discuss her concerns.
I am concerned that the wind turbines are going to have a negative effect on our children. There are 18 industrial wind turbines within 3 kilometers of all the schools in the area. Also, these children will be at home with the wind turbines. They will drive on a bus through a turbine ghetto to get to their schools, and there will be a continual noise and a continual thrumming through the day, and this is going to affect the children's learning environment.
Susan invited over a close friend and partner in the fight. Shelley is a fellow member of Mothers Against Wind Turbines. She wishes to stay in the area, but believes that the potential negative effects might force her away from this community.
I have a son named Joey Correa who has sensory processing issues. They're severe. I have a letter from his specialist saying that would be very detrimental to him, that it would be harmful to his ability to sleep, his ability to do homework or concentrate on anything. I have talked to everyone I can possibly think of to talk to, and at this point I haven't really had any sort of satisfaction from anybody. Everybody just keeps saying the Green Energy Act has allowed them to push these turbines on communities with absolutely no say from anybody, and all of the processes that were put in place to protect children like my son have been taken away. There's a huge divide in the community. Anyone that supports the wind turbines, basically, we feel doesn't support the residents of rural Ontario.
I don't believe that I'm hurting rural Ontario. I feel like we're doing the right thing. The world's in desperate need of a cleanup.
Living here since 1983 and seeing the huge yellow streak of pollution going across the sky from the coal-fired plant in Nanticoke always worried me. I always knew that can't be good. I mean, I know it was high enough that it was mostly bypassing our area, but somebody downwind was catching hell from all that pollution. I'm happy to see that gone. That plant's closed now. They're replacing it with wind energy and solar, and that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Even after speaking to both sides of the battle, I still feel very strongly about wind. I feel sorry for the people that are terrified to the point where they feel it's necessary to leave their homes, but unfortunately, change is inevitable. While cold shoulders and disgusted looks are still directed at my family, I can feel relief that it's not a simple case of jealousy. I can only hope that once the turbine is up and the dust is settled, that we'll be able to rebuild our community.